Well, it is the big story of the day. Today, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will be facing the challenging task of delivering a budget that seeks to balance a limited revenue collection against various competing spending priorities in what is expected to be a highly contested election year. For more, SABC News anchor Nompumelelo Siziba joins us live now from Cape Town. Nompumelelo, thank you so much, Nompu, for your time. So you've been, of course, speaking to various analysts. What are some of the economists and labor unions expecting to come out of this budget speech?
Thanks very much, Unati. Well, we're in sunny Cape Town, and indeed we're here for that big budget 2024. Economists are expecting that indeed we're going to have a wider budget deficit. That is, government will be spending far much more money than it actually receives in tax revenues, and that's because of the slowing economy. The midterm budget policy statement had predicted that we'd see a budget deficit of 4.9% for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Basically ends at the end of March, but some economists expect that that might actually widen, which means that government has been spending much more than it anticipated to spend up until this point. And the problem is that the revenue is just not coming in. Part of the problem has been the mining sector, which actually was a really positive contributor to fiscal revenue in the previous fiscal year because of good commodity prices, and the companies were managing to export decent volumes. But now that's all changed, especially with our logistics problems with Transnet and so on. But without any further ado, I do have an expert with me to break down some of the issues. His name is Dr. Christy Vuyong. He's a senior economist at PwC. Christy, thank you so much for joining us. So, of course, the big deal now is that when we look at what happened with fiscal year 2022 to 2023, the wonderful thing was that the finance minister was reporting revenue overruns, close to 100 billion rand. But on this occasion, we're getting a negative of that for this particular fiscal year. Why is that? Speak to that.
Yes, so the previous fiscal year was probably a bit like Cape Town today, a little bit too sunny. But also a bit windy. So we've got the wind moving in for this fiscal year where revenue is underperforming, unfortunately. The economy is growing by less than we expected. You mentioned the challenges with mining, getting mining goods exported. We've got challenges with railway, with port logistics. So that's going out at a slower speed. And also with those challenges, fewer imports. So revenue from customs duties, for example, all of those are being negatively affected. A little bit here, a little bit there, but everything adds up. So we're looking at the current fiscal year, looking at getting less revenue than expected. Now that means we've got a bigger deficit. Government plans how much revenue it's getting, then it plans expenditure. And when that revenue falls short, it means the deficit is bigger, we have to borrow more money.
Now, interestingly, the finance minister in the midterm budget in November, he indicated that SARS or the National Treasury would be looking to extract a further 15 billion rand from us as taxpayers. But we know that the economy is not doing terribly well. So where on earth will they be able to extract that kind of revenue?
Well, we got the warning that they said maybe they need to change some tax rates to get that extra 15. So in almost like a worst case scenario, they say we're going to increase personal income tax rates or maybe VAT. We would prefer the finance minister to rather look at where money is maybe not being used. We often hear the story about budgets, for example, for infrastructure not being spent. And it's been a theme the past few years that the minister says we can find that amount from there. We've given that money, it's allocated, it's not being used, let's take it back and rather use it elsewhere. So that would actually be the ideal. Go look at where money is not being spent and use that. If that is not enough, we have to think of creative ways to get more of that money in. And if worse comes to worse, it might mean increases in certain tax rates.
So in the South African economic context, normally people talk about the elephant in the room, but in our case, there's several elephants in the room. But let's talk about Transnet and Eskom. Eskom has been extremely well supported fiscally by National Treasury. We know that it got that 254 billion rand injection. It's getting it in tranches. It hasn't got all of it. But then Transnet, of course, is a very key player for our economy, and we know that we're really going backwards because of the problems there at their port and rail facilities. They're looking for about 100 billion rand. Do we expect an announcement from the Treasury in this regard? And if so, what does that then do to the debt pile that we already have?
Well, look, state-owned enterprises has been a key theme for many, many years because of the challenges and the financial losses, for example. Government has stepped in over the past 5 to 10 years to give significant cash injections, in some cases taking over some of the debt responsibility. So it's part of the budget every year, and the question is always, how much of the fiscal purse are we going to spend on public enterprises that could have probably gone to something like building hospitals, building schools, for example. The frustration is that it's money being given to organizations where we know what the challenges are and we should be able to fix them. So the key focus, I think, this time around, as you said, is around the railway space. We know on the electricity side what the plan is, and it's ongoing and it's been implemented. I think railway is the key focus, where we need to see an improvement in railway, but also the port system, which is part of the whole ecosystem of rail, to get more exports out, to get more imports in, so that our economy can grow. So from an economic growth and development perspective, we focus on that. It's not just how much of the budget money is going there, but how can we help this economy by getting those processes to run better.
Dr. Christy Filion, thank you so much for that insight on this very special day, Budget 2024, where we're waiting to see what the Minister has to say come 2 o'clock Central African time. I'm going to hand over to my colleague now, Bulelani Philip. Thank you.
And now the cloud moves in. Oh my goodness. They're over there now.
Are divided on what they expect. Of course, the opposition side are saying that they don't expect anything new from the finance minister. Same old promises, but poor on delivery. But of course, now we'll chat to the chairperson of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Sifiso Buthelezi. Mr. Buthelezi, thanks so much for making time to us. You're the body that oversees the appropriations of the government funds. Since the minister's appointment, have you been seeing progress and whether he's steering the country in the right direction?
Good morning, Bulelani. Good morning to the SABC News viewers. Obvious, the fact that we have got a country which is still is able to come and deliver a budget and still provide a number of services, despite all the external shocks which this economy has been faced with. It means that's what has been happening. The minister has been steering the country in the right direction as far as the budget is concerned. We still have got a budget which is able to look after the schools, which is able to look after health, which is looking after the police, which is also able to provide a safety net to the multitudes of our people, the poorest of the poor. So we've been able to sustain the country. We've been able to ensure that with all these shocks that are outside us, you know that we were faced with the COVID, which was an external shock. We're faced with the Russia-Ukraine war. Now we have got the Middle East crisis. So all those things coming together, they've got an impact on the economy. So it has impacted on the way the economy works. But despite all that, we still were able to provide those services. So the answer is a big yes, and the ANC will continue dealing with those things. You know, when we deal with the budget, the ANC approaches the budget. Always, every budget must deal with the question of inequality. The budget must deal with poverty. The budget must deal with the high levels of inequality. Must also deal with the questions of economic growth. So those are the things which will guide every.
Talking about those things, the triple challenges, of course, is the issue of emphasis every year. The numbers coming out of Stats SA yesterday, unemployment still on the rise. Given the infrastructure development projects that government has been undertaking, they've been pinning the hopes of job creation on them, but it doesn't seem that they are bearing any fruits.
You see, when the numbers come out, obviously they could have been better. The other side is that if it was not for these interventions, the numbers could have been worse, right? So let me make an example. One of the interventions that has come out from this budget, the presidential employment stimulus, that has created 1.7 million jobs for young people. 1.7 million. That's a big number by any means. So which shows that our intervention is working. But things government will come with these projects. Remember that in most cases these projects, it's at the end of the day the private sector who ends up implementing these projects. We do provide this budget. The private sector must do that. And they are doing that. You know, Mzimvubu is up and running. The Limpopo Academic Hospital is up and running. We are busy with the Lesotho Highlands Water Scheme. All those things are working. There's no doubt about that. So that's why I'm saying that the interventions have made sure that we don't find ourselves in a worse situation. Could we have done better? Exactly. All of us as a country, government could have delivered better. For instance, one of the things that the parliament has been seized with was the failure of some departments, the failure of some municipalities to spend money that has been allocated to them. I'm sure you know the question of the 229 million rand, something like that, which the city of Tshwane to take back, despite the challenges that you are having in Hammanskraal. So it's not only them. I'm just making that example. Those are the types of things that taking out the budget, allocating the budget as the Minister of Finance and as Parliament through our Appropriations Committee, it's one thing. But spending that money and spending it effectively and efficiently is something else. The returning of money back to the fiscals when we've got these challenges, when we are saying that because of the deficit, we go out and borrow money, right? To borrow money, you pay money. It's reflected in the debt service cost. But to do that, you go and borrow money, and people don't spend that money. They deny the people the services that they were going to get. But more than anything else, they deny the economy the ability to grow, and the economy the ability to create more jobs. So we're saying that with all that, we should be looking at all ourselves and say, not only looking at the Minister of Finance, that what are we supposed to be doing? It's the Minister of Finance is going to say, here's the budget. Parliament is going to go over this thing and and allocate budget to different role players in the economy. We need to make things better there.
All right, thank you so much, Sifiso Buthelezi, the chairperson of the Appropriations Committee. Of course, I'm sure he'll be putting a close eye on how the minister allocates the government's resources. For now, we cross back to studio.
All right, thank you so much to my colleagues there, Bulelani Philip, as well as Nompumelelo Siziba, just giving us a scene setter in terms of what we can expect at 2 p.m. This afternoon when the finance minister delivers his budget speech.